Okay, so looking at this, what if we wanted to add a building? So the first thing you'd probably want to actually do is we have our folder here. So I'm going to prefab one of our soldiers. I'm going to zero off their position because you should do that with your prefabs. All right, now I'm just going to delete them. All right, and if I want to see if they still work, I mean, I have prefabs. I can drag them out, drag as many as I want out, and they will all still work just fine. Once it plays, we all see that. All right, so there they go. They work totally fine as prefabs. Perfect. Cool. But what about a building? Oh man, buildings. That's something different. So I think the way it'd be best to do buildings is more or less we need, well, first we need a building. Let's start with that. Let's get, what do I have for a building? Something cool. Tent. There we go. We have a building. And it doesn't freaking do anything. Well, it needs various things. So what if we want placement? What the, I think the thing I would probably want to add is we're going to make an empty. All right, and this, we can even name this. We'll call it scan. And this tent, because it's an RTS, we're going to use a box collider for it. So this size becomes really important. And you'll see why very, very shortly. First thing I think we should do is make, and if you've never used this before, this will be a learning tool for you. We're going to go to the Enum Creator Wizard. Okay, so a building, if we think about it in the ways of constructing, we have kind of three states, and there could be more depending how big you want to make this. But we're going to do start new. So here we have an enum name. So we're going to call this building states. You can't have spaces in there. And we need, say, 3 states. We're going to have built. Oh, I have caps locks on. We have built. We have build good and build bad. All right, now I'll save that. So ideally, what we have is, we have to wait for Unity to compile. This is the only time Playmaker actually does compiling and stuff, is for these enums. This is like a normal thing if you do regular scripting, which is a pain. It's kind of a nice benefit of Playmaker. You don't typically have to do too much compiling. So let's, for example, let's just see something real quick. If we get material, right? If we say get owner, get material, and we call this the built material, and we need 2 other materials. So let's go to our folder, our RTS folder, and create 2 materials. Or we can create one and just duplicate it. We'll call it build good, and then we can just duplicate that one and just rename it build bad. And we can say good, well, just to make sure everything looks cool for it. You know what, I'm going to take this guy And I'm going to bring him. Actually, you know what? I'm going to duplicate him. So I don't feel like hopping folders all the time. So I'm going to make a copy of our material here. Build, or let's call it built. Alright, so if I now go and say put bad on it, it looks like crap. Well, let's make this transparent, and let's give this a color. So if it's bad, let's, you know, do something, something a little like that. And we don't want those. We should have that. Let's get rid of that. Right, so we can have that. Now, you don't have to go transparent. I mean, you can go make it that. It just kind of looks cooler if it's not. You can do a fade as well. Maybe a fade's cooler looking. Right, and then we can have is good. And we obviously, well, we need to change this one so it also looks good. You know, something like that. And then we have, of course, our default build, which is normal. Okay. So if we, for example, if we get material and then we have a variable and we choose enum, this is our current state. So our enum type, if you've never used enums, it'll ask you for the type and then the value. So you go to type and you go up to com. That's usually where everything goes when we build it. And we have, well, I've built a few of them here, but we have our building states. So I'm going to select that. Now we have 3. We have these 3 different states. So I'm going to default it as good for now. And I'm also going to drag in to the variables these 2 other materials, the good and the bad. So now we have 3 materials and we have essentially a enum test. So if I don't know what, or not enum test, I don't even know what that is. I haven't even heard of that before. Enum, oh, that's one of mine I was playing with. Let's do an enum switch. No, we should do a compare. So now here you have to select it all again. We could actually use our current state and it'll automatically set that up. So if we are built, then we have a build event, or we'll call it built. And we can go here. And then we could set material of ourselves to our built material. And then we could also say if it is building states compared to build good, we'll say good, and if compared to build bad, we'll do bad. Add that. Right, and I might as well just copy this state link those into it, and we'll use the good. Over here we'll use the bad. Okay, cool. Now if we are in the good though, we're going to want to be able to go build. And if we're also in the good, we're going to want to be able to go bad. And of course, vice versa. If we are in the bad state, we want to be able to go build. Well, not really. I guess we don't. You shouldn't be going built if you're in the bad state. But if we're in the bad state, we can go good. All right, so now we have that. Cool. Now what if we have an FSM that controls those states, right? So we can FSM Enum. You know what? I don't have it. So let's get it. Let's go to the ecosystem. FSM Enum. We should have, yeah, we have FSM Enum compare. I'm going to grab switch too, just in case I need it. All right, so what we need is to check if we can be good or bad, right? So we need to more or less have, we're in a good state, we're in a bad state, and we're in a built state, but not dealing with the graphics. This one that deals with the graphics, this one can deal with other stuff. So in the very first thing we're going to want to do is get child, because we have a child named scan. Let's call this our scan. And we also have a box collider on ourselves. So get well, we can set it center. We could do, oh, no, we can't do that. We need to we could use it with the set property, but it's best to not use set properties if you can avoid it, because setting properties is reflection. So all right, well, we're going to have to do it anyways. So let's go like this. We need a component. We need an object. We'll call this the collider object. The object type is going to be Unity engine. And collider, I'm going to default it to box collider. We really don't need any sphere colliders. You can just say collider in general. But all right, so get component, right? We want to get component of ourselves stored into collider. So it's going to get this object. Now we want to say, hey, this collider, right? Like if we zero that, it's in a bad spot. And we don't want to do that. So we more or less need to take that center Y and set the position of him. So we need to get property after the component. So we're getting the property of the collider, the center Y, and this can be the, we'll just call it Y. And now we need to set position, and we do this by code to make it flexible so that this can work on every building, right? So I'm going to use self space, use the Y, and we want to do this on the scan, right? So we've gotten the child here, we get our collider, we get its height, we set his position. All right, so let's default over to our good side. So what we want to do is we want to, and this I believe is also on the ecosystem, is we have this thing called get overlap box. So the box size needs to be the same size as our collider. So again, we need another get property. Just going to copy this one, and we want to get size as a vector 3. So let's call this one size. So now we can say our box size is size. We're going to use this from owner, and we're going to use the scan. We need an array, and we should use a layer mask. I'm not going to right now, but well, maybe I will. So let's default him. Let's add a layer. Let's use a layer and call it the build layer. And I'm going to default him to the build layer. Right? So we're going to use a layer mask of, well, default for now. So he's on a different layer. And if we hit something, no, maybe we shouldn't do the hit. Should we? Well, let's see. So when we hit play, it should be green because we're in a good state as far as it's concerned. It finds the child, right? It gets the collider, it gets that Y, which is what this number is, right? It gets the size, which is what this number is, setting the position on this guy, right? So he's in the middle of the collider technically. And now he comes over and we're going to scan. And we have this, we have empty. Right, now if I moved him down and just put him in the ground a bit, just a little bit, and if I restart this FSM, is that the right one? Oh, there we go. We can see we have terrain. We're hitting the terrain, right? So what we need to do is we're going to take the terrain off of the default. We'll make a new layer. We'll call it terrain. And we'll put the terrain on the terrain. That's all it's going to do. So now he can't hit the terrain. You might want to hit the terrain. You know, if you got hills and you don't want to build into the hill, it might be a good thing. Most RTS, your ground should be pretty flat For the most part, it shouldn't be too hilly, really. Like, you'll have some hills, obviously, but... So, anyways. So, we are here. So, what we want to do is I'm going to just use a next frame event. And we'll use a finish. And now we want to array length over count, the same thing, and this is the length. And we're not going to use this one every frame. And now we're going to compare. So we're going to compare, after we get the length, of course, not before, the length to 0. All right, now if they're equal, it's good. If it's greater, it's bad. We're hitting something, right? So if it's good, go down here. If it's bad, go over here. Just like that. And we're going to do the same thing over here, that same state, and we're actually going to get the same action over here. So I can literally just copy and paste. And if it's good, we can go up here, and if it's bad, we can go up here. So that might kind of look funny, but this is what it looks like. Right? He'll sit up there. And if I grab our tent now, it said the terrain he can't see. But if I make an object, such as this cube, and I take our tent, and I put him over here, he's swapped over to the bad. Now, for some reason, he's sitting in the bad, just sitting there, because I forgot to put in the next frame event. But, you know, it works. So we need the next frame event in this guy, though. All right, so what does that mean? Well, that means if we hit this state, right? And we can say take these two. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Hitting the wrong button. Let's say green and red. So if we're in the good, set FSM enum. Right, so we have our two things. So we want to say in our states, we want to set our variable of current state, which is an enum type of building states, and we want to say it's build good. I'm going to move this right to the top though. Copy it, and I'm going to bring it down here. Same thing, but build bad. So now, let's make a couple boxes. And hit play. And you can see as I move, oh, he didn't come out of his red. And that's because I forgot to change the, like I just copied them over, and that's, you know, great. But in this one, we're not comparing. Oh, we are still comparing. We're getting the length, and it needs to be 0. So if it's 0, it's good. Goes up there. We might have to reset that array. Let's check. So we hit him, he goes bad. He's flipping back and forth, and if we come up, Yeah, see, he still sees the cube. All right, so what we're going to do then is, in the bad, we're going to make one more little state, and that's array resize to 0. All right, because now he's bad, but he's good. He's bad, he's good. All right. There we go. Cool. So, with that said, we need a build, right? So we're putting this logic on this tent itself, which I wasn't planning on doing that. I was actually going to make a manager to do all this for us. But I wanted to show you all this. I don't know if I should just keep that way. Right, so we have the building states, and we have those. So what we need is, yeah, you know what? I'm going to make a template of this. Right, so this would need a variable. This will need a game object variable called, we'll call it the building. And this is an input. So we're getting the material of the building, right? The states we don't care. And we're going to set the material of the building, right? We'll set the material of the building. But we will need this current state, right? Because that we affect. So the current state needs to be a input. So now if I save that as a template, and let's say building states, right, now technically I could create a manager. And I can add an FSM, and in this FSM I could run my building states, and it wants a few objects, right? And I can tell it, you're going to use this guy. Now we need this guy also needs to be a template then. So he has get child. Okay, first let's make a variable. Let's say the building and make him a input. Right, so we want to get the child of our building. We want to get component of our building. Right, so that's all good. And this part here might have to change. Right, because we can't really set the FSM. What we can do is just set it outwards, right? So instead of setting it here, we can just set enum, right? And then we can turn around and make our enum, and this is our building state, and we'll use that same enum, of course. There we go. So we can use building state, and it sets that for us automatically, and we can get rid of that. Now building state needs to be a output, right? So this is not built, he's built good. Come along over here, get rid of that one, and this is build bad. Now he should be totally good. So we can save template. So this is building, so that one states this is, we'll call it building test. We are testing the building. So now I can actually get rid of both of those. So he now has no logic on him. Dun, dun, dun. And we can run FSM. And of course on this FSM, we are building. We need a building test. So I once again could use the same object just to show you and see building state. Oh, is this going to let me use a variable? Good. So this is an output, right? So this is our we're going to set building state, which means up here the current state can use a variable, and we can, he is now controlling this guy. See how I did that? Pretty sneaky, huh? So this manager should now be working. Might have to tweak. We'll have to test it, right? So we have, and of course it is not doing it. He is in his built. So let's see. He says built. Okay, so that's kind of one thing. Obviously we need to default this guy, right? His building state is built. Let's default it to good or bad, either or. Just don't default it to built, because obviously he set it to built and it wasn't any good. All right, so here now we have, oh, he's again built. And he is building good. And if we move him, might have to do a slight modification, but that's okay. Build bad, build good, build bad. All right. So I think building test should probably be before the building states. Said order, execution order is very important. Right, so there now he's green. Right, and that's, he has no logic on him. Keep that in mind. And if I we need to go into here. Do we have it on the right thing? He is bad. Build bad. He's saying build good. All right, so that's because he is, and he's supposed to be a input. And every now and then you run across this issue with the templates when they do that. So easiest thing to do is we have a variable here called set building state. And we have a manager here. So let's call this manager. And we have a variable name set building state. So in here, all we need to do, I'm going to take this current state and take it out of input. And here, get FSM enum. Make sure to put it at the top. Like I said, order is very important. So from the owner, actually I can just select this. Oh, nah, it's going to make me do that anyways. So get FSM enum. And this will tell you all sorts of crazy stuff. Don't worry about that. Enum type. We can just store the value. So this is going to be actually from the owner. Right, so, and we're going to store it into current state. And we need to do this every frame. So copy, paste before, paste before. All right, and there we go. And we could technically do the same thing with this guy right here. We could use the set FSM enum and set this same variable. But let's test it like that. So that's just kind of one of those iffy things I've found with templates. It's a little minor communication thing. But there we go, it's working. Cool, cool. So obviously we don't want to drag stuff in here. We want to use a variable. So this is our building. Use the same variable on both of them. Okay. So this manager can now do a building. Now, what if we get mouse down? Now, if we get the left mouse button down, we could say, let's say build for an event. So if we build, what do we need to do? We need to know if this set building state is in a good position, right? So if set building state is good, we can build. And if it's not equal, we can't build. And if we can't build, we'll go back. But beyond that, we're going to go forward, right? So then, all we need to do then is choose building states. I'm going to copy that guy. All right, no, we want this one. I believe. And no, we won't go that route. So yeah, I mean, we do need to set a variable in here, right? So how do we want to do that? Because it's being a pain in the bum, right? It needs to take that as an input. It needs to. Well, it doesn't need to. There's other ways around it. Right, and he can just say built, which is actually fine, just like that. So let's see if that works. If not, we'll think of another way. Right, so here we have oh yeah, I guess that's what the other thing is we made a variable, right? So the building we're talking to right now is this guy. So the building himself, right? If we come over here and if I click, he's going to say no. And if I drag him over, he's going to say yes. And he needs to say build good. But he needs to be in build. He needs to go to build. So let's get rid of that. You know what? This build material. I'm going to set this build material as an output. Because that should now give us the ability there. Because now we should just be able to set material. I guess we really don't need that third state then, do we? On the building to the build material, and we can also set its layer of the building to we can go to default. And now we should have, right, so if I go to the build manager and if I click, he pops over. He goes to his normal color, his layer is set to default, life is good. Okay, perfect. So he's building. But now how do we get this thing to move around with our mouse? Obviously, right? So this is all cool, like, you know, okay, well, but it's not actually how you would start this FSM, right? You would want essentially to create something, some sort of chosen building, and this is your building, right? And then you would go into here. So you would need to mouse pick, and we're mouse picking and we're going to hit a layer. We only want to hit terrain, and we'll make sure we're going to hit them, and we're going to store the point as the hit point. And in this case, we're only going to do this once, not every frame, and we're going to spawn this guy at the hit point, and then we're going to copy our mouse pick, and over here now set position let's do it after the mouse pick though. Oh, gotta make sure we do that. Okay, no, he's good. So we want to set position of the building, world space, every frame to the hit point. All right, So here, it's a matter of what building are we choosing, right? So if we have an event, build, I'll call it the build system event. Build system. And this one, get event properties. And we can do this a few different ways. We want to do a string or a game object and use a dictionary. Let's use a string. Let's call it this building. It is a type string. Data is going to be, let's see. First, let's add a hash table. Whoops. Let's add an actual hash table proxy. So let's call this hash table the build system. And it is going to be prefill type game object, which is fine. Let's give them a prefill count of 1 for now, because we don't have anything else. Let's call him a tent. And we need to prefab our tent. I guess we don't need to prefab, but you should be prefabbing him. Delete him. Go to our manager. And I was building that on that prefab, wasn't I? Yes, I was. I did not mean to do that. I meant to build the hash table on the manager. So go to the tent and get rid of the hash table. We don't need it on the tent. It's supposed to be on the manager. So yeah, we have tent. So the game object is going to be the tent. So here we have a type string, this building. So we're going to get that, and now we're going to hash table get. Move to the bottom. So the reference we're talking about is this hash table. The key is what we got here. It's a type game object, and it's going to be our building. Oh, sneaky. Or no, it's going to be our chosen building, sorry. And now we can just come over here. So all we have to do is send an event called build system with this building. All right, cool. How do we do that? Well, in our case, let's do a, you know what? Let's do an image. Images are fun. I'm going to get rid of this one and this one. We don't need that stuff. Let's take this here image. Header canvas. Scale with screen size. Expand. All right. So this image can sit, well, for now it can sit up here, and I'm going to actually anchor this to this top corner, and FSM. So this manager is obviously going to need, in the start, get owner, new global variable, build manager. All right, so now this image, let's add a couple UI events. Let's do UI pointer click. Actually, no. Let's do UI pointer enter. And then in here, do a normal transition for UI pointer click. And if that's the case, set event data, properties. We want to set the key tent. Oh no, wait. Build this. And it is a type string, and the string is tent. Right, that's what we called everything. That's tent, and this was this building. That's what the event we got. So we got to call build system. This building is tent. All right, there we go. Now we can send event to a game object. First I'm going to specify it and just drag this in because it just makes life easier to select all this stuff. Build system. But now swap it over to the variable and do the build system, build manager. There we go. And then it's over here, add on pointer exit. Yeah, I could just use a button, but I like to do this stuff. I like to use the images. There's more you can do, I find, with the images. I think, grant, you got to do it manually. Right, so here we have all this, and if I come over, well, now is that because we have two canvases? It shouldn't be because we have two canvases. Oh, it is because we have two canvases. Well, okay, I'll be damned. All right then, get rid of that one. It probably had the raycast turned off, come to think of it. So let's now see. Okay, we come along and we click him, we get our thing, and we are in, we never mouse picked at every position. All right, so here we have, we don't, no, we're, because we're set in position every, no, don't set position every, nope, in this one we do set every position every frame, but we also need to be mouse picking every frame. So this one here we don't want every frame. Right. So we click, there we go. So now, and I click, and I can click him. And see, I can't go into him. There we go. So now we have that. Now there's there's all sorts of things you can do with the rotations and stuff like that. I don't think I'll get into that today. That seems a little excessive. But there's so far there's that, right? Now I think I'll probably end the video on that. I don't want to get into the next part, because the next part is to click on the building, right? Because we want to add the building into the RTS system, so you can click on it, but then have the building able to produce our soldiers, right? But anyway, so let's just leave it at that. We'll start to build a little bit of a UI, and we need to build more UI, and we can build a building. Now you normally wouldn't build a building like with a button like this, and that's something we can change later. Like normally, if you look at it like RTS games, you either start with a base or you start with units that can build your base, more or less. Either way, it's kind of one of those things. So you don't typically get a button like this, so we're gonna have to go with one of those two routes.